Good afternoon all and welcome to our first ever Sky Fantasy deadline stream by Fantasy Football Herd as we look ahead to Game Week 9, which begins in around 45 minutes. My name is Andrew and I'm joined as usual by two of the most successful Sky managers in the game. Firstly, Paul McAnulty. Paul, are you still on Ben White or have you been swayed by our chat into some rogue move this evening?
No, I'm still on Ben White and day off work today as well. So,
all right, so you're still on Ben. I know we've been chatting non-stop all day trying to persuade each other to make these rogue stupid moves, but so far you're holding firm. I'm not sure I am. I can see myself making a move in the next 45 minutes, but we'll see.
As long as you're screen sharing, when you do it.
Right. As you can see, Dan Cox hasn't made it tonight. He's orange flagged with work. He did tweet saying he hoped Michelle Keegan wouldn't be the replacement, but as you can see, we have done our best to get her on. However, we are actually honoured to have on his replacement to welcome the godfather of Sky Fantasy Football, as he hates to be called, Disable, aka Luke Williams. Great to have you on, Luke. How is it going?
It's all good. Sorry, guys, it's not Michelle Keegan. I mean,
to
be honest, if I could have made that happen, I'd have done it for you, definitely. I'm just looking on the video because I've got it in the background and I can see the picture you've done now. Great work. Sorry, that was a hell of a reveal. I needed to put like a wig on or something.
How is your season going, Luke?
It's okay. It's not too bad. I think I'm around the 4K mark. I think I've used 6 transfers, was a little bit more than I wanted to. But I'm pretty happy with my team at the moment. So I don't feel like I'll be using that many more in the coming weeks. Well, the way injuries are going, that might change pretty shortly. But not too bad. Happy overall.
Have you got a captain for this evening?
I have got a captain for this evening. And I don't even want to say their name because I know that will jinx it.
Right, okay, fair enough.
No, I might say it later.
Okay. So if anyone doesn't know Luke, he is the original Sky Fantasy guru. Luke, I read your articles for years ago. I think you actually got me into the game, to be fair. I'm sure you actually got quite a lot of people playing the game over the years. So Luke is one of the originals. He's had a 4th place finished years and years ago. And I have got a text message off Dan, which he told me I have to read out. So let me just find it and I will read it out. So make sure you refer to him as the godfather of Sky, just to embarrass him further. He said Dan created that nickname and hail how he's the first guy to start covering Sky Fantasy. Also tell him and our listeners that I credit him with my win. I messaged him when I had a mess of a team and he instructed me to take out Masuaku and Fisher. I mean, flipping heck. Did he actually need to be told to do that?
I had Fisher that season as well. It was a Chapman legend.
For football manager, exactly. For Idrissa Gueye and Holibat, and the rest was history. So there we go, Dan. You can't have a go now. Welcome everyone in the chat. Welcome Auto Reclose, PM, Alex Sloan, Peter G, Scott McDonald, KG, Mark Thomas, Jonathan Maloney again, Runnerid, Sam Smith. Get your questions in, guys. It's not very often that we have FPL. I said FPL. It's not often we have Sky Fantasy royalty on in, Luke. So get your questions in, everyone there. So firstly, Paul, can you give us the lineups for the early Brighton-Burnley game?
Yeah. So Brighton's lining up as I guess we would imagine, apart from there's no Trossard. So I know a lot of people in the chat last week had Trossard in their team. So it's a bit of a nightmare from there. So it's Ryan in goals, Lamptey, White, Webster, Basuma, Malpe's back in the fold, Pascal Gross, Lallana, Welbeck is making a start, Byrne and Veltman. And for Burnley, the only inclusion that I thought was surprising was Ben Mee's back from injury now, taking Kevin Long's place. Brady's playing as well. I don't think he'll probably be in a lot of teams. So Pope, Loughton, Mee, Tarkovsky, Taylor, McNeil, Westwood, Brownhill, Brady, Wood, and Barnes up front.
Oh, fantastic! So for Trossard owners, I suppose immediately, guys, one of the first questions for them is, are there any kind of natural replacements, do we think? Is it worth it? I think the majority of the stream will be around, looking ahead at this weekend. I think most people have probably got tomorrow and Sunday covered, but for this evening it's been quite hard. Obviously Ings out, so I've got a decision to make on Ings and some others as well. So we've had a question from Peter G, Romeo versus Lamptey for tonight's captain. So obviously bearing in mind, everyone's kind of advice and their own thoughts on, on whether they have a captain or not. Romeo or Lamptey, Luke, what do you think? Or if someone was picking out of those two?
From those two, I mean, I would probably err towards Romeo, just because, first of all, I think his tackle bonus will be more consistent over the season. I also trust him a little bit more in terms of injuries. I think Lamptey's already had a few dices with death in just 7-8 weeks. Yeah. So it's a bit of a worry. I mean, he wasn't even sure to start tonight, was he? But also, I think more just because I think the defensive spot is more of a power position than the midfielder. So I'd rather use my cheap rubbish option as one of the midfielders. And I think the defenders are just gold in Sky. Like, this season's a little bit different than the past in some ways. In terms of the top echelon of defenders haven't been quite as good this time.
Yeah.
But there's just so many good defenders now, like mid-price, top level, cheap. They're all so good. And I don't think you want to waste one of those spots on Lamptey if you can help it.
Fair enough.
Well,
no, it's a really thorough answer there, Luke. Thank you very much for that. Paul, any kind of thoughts on that? I know you love Romeo anyway.
Romeo's my boy. Yes. I just think I've got Ben White as captain today, and I just know Brighton will concede in the first 10 minutes. So Romeo would be my captain on that basis. I think Brighton's kept 5 clean sheets in the last 40 Premier League games.
Wow,
or something. It's something like, don't quote me on that. That's not one of my stats that I've pulled out. I'm sure I read it somewhere at some point. It's like really bad defensive returns. I'd only picked Ben White because I thought he'd be playing centre half, and he was playing against teams that he would pick up passing bonus from. And on the flip side, because he's been moved into centre midfield, he's actually picked up tackling bonus more so than the passing bonus. But that was my initial reason for going from not to fall back on the clean sheet side of things.
Okay. AD Tor, who was a better choice, Pope or Mopai for captain tonight? I have both in my team. Luke, who would you think was a better choice, Mopai or Pope for this evening?
I mean, I will always err on the side of the forward. It's like that last question. I think Romeo is a better option going forward for the season. But if you were to ask me who's the better option for the one-off captain, I'd still say Lamptey ahead of him, because he's obviously got clean sheet potential. He's got assists. Romeo's not got any of that. He's probably just a pretty safe pick further forward. But again, for the captain, you're going to go Mopai, aren't you? Because he has shots on goal for a start. I think he's one of the top 10 forwards for shots on target. Yeah, 1.41 a game on average. So you're looking at getting a tier bonus there, even if he blanks. So yeah, I mean, I take that all day. Just always favour the attackers. It doesn't always work out that way, but I think if you do that consistently, then overall you should be up on the deal, I think.
Cool. So the key dilemma for this stream, I think, for a lot of people, especially those who follow our streams on a Sunday evening and follow our podcast 11, is what to do if you have Danny Ings. And obviously his ownership is quite high. There's kind of a lot of different options. I was originally planning on moving Ings onto De Bruyne either on Sunday or after the break, and kind of skipping the captaincy. Even though that Ings is kind of a dead player now in the team, everyone is tempted, including myself, to kind of move him on, right? So we've talked about Romeo, we've talked about Lamptey, we've talked about Ben White. Now, Wilson for Newcastle, and only the people who have looked at Ian Parrin's projected planner here will know this, but he's actually projected there's a pretty good chance that Newcastle will have a Friday night captaincy game away to Crystal Palace on Friday the 26th of November, which would be the day before De Bruyne plays Burnley at home on Saturday the 27th. So it is a prediction and it is a risk. Let me ask you this, Luke. So if we knew that game was moved to the Friday night, it would give you Wilson for captain tonight. It would give you Ings to play Chelsea the first Saturday back, and it would give you Wilson's captaincy on that other Friday night. So it's basically five kind of sets of scoring there. And in that time, De Bruyne plays Liverpool and Spurs. If that was the case, would you be tempted to go Ings for Wilson, or would you still look to save or move to De Bruyne on Sunday or after the break? So there's a lot of questions in there then, but hopefully you get the gist.
Yeah, to be honest, I think if you are banking on that Friday night game happening, and it does very much sound like it's going to, or has got a high chance, then I would do it. I mean, if it was confirmed right now, I probably would take that because, like you say, it's almost a 5-2. You're throwing in a couple of armbands there.
Yep.
You just by sheer volume of games and chances, he only has to pick up maybe 1 assist, 1 goal, something like 1 shots on target over that period to probably do better than De Bruyne. And that's a risky thing to say because it's De Bruyne, right?
Yeah, no, of course.
That's the only worry. But for me, for example, I've got Guita in goal, who's been a tragedy. But to be honest, I did it because of what Ian Parron said on here about Palace having a lot of the Friday games, and I thought, well, I don't want to cover Palace another way, so I'll do it that way. So I've kind of lucked out a bit potentially. But I think in your situation, or people who don't have a yeah, I think I'd be tempted by that. I mean, I don't really like Wilson as an option, so it's hard for me to say. I struggle to watch Newcastle play sometimes, and he frustrates me whenever I've owned him in the past. But with penalties,
he needs a penalty, don't he? This is the thing.
Exactly. Yeah, I think that's probably the way to go. I'd probably just edge on that way.
Bugger. It means I've got to make a sub now in the next 34 minutes if I'm going to do it.
Wow.
Fergie, you're talking about moving Wilson on De Bruyne on the 28th as well, but Newcastle could potentially play the following 2 Fridays as well.
Oh, flipping heck. So
potentially they would be away to Villa. I know people might have Grealish, you have got Grealish on the 4th of December, and then on the 11th of December, if it got moved, they'd be home to West Brom.
Yeah.
Where you could obviously move someone else, where you could obviously move... I'd leave you the flexible to move someone else on De Bruyne on that Saturday if you want.
Okay, let's have a vote then in the chat on whether I and anyone else in my position, of which there's probably a few of us who don't have a captain for this evening. So I've used 5 transfers. So it's not like, I've already used kind of 7 or 8 and I'm making all these kind of luxury moves. Let's have a vote in the chat to see if I should move on Ings to Wilson this evening. If it is, I'm going to have to make the move in the next half an hour, hoping the Sky app doesn't crash, because that would be an absolute... tragedy there as well. A couple more questions we had on Twitter this afternoon. A question off Pete Kemp. Che Adams to Zuma, worth the move after the Saints game? Obviously, it depends on captaincies and stuff. Paul, what do you think? Adams to Zuma, worth the move?
Yes.
Do we think that Zuma is going to keep his place long term? I mean, he's obviously been fabulous so far. Great option, got the goals, wherever else. However, with Rudiger and Christensen just kind of waiting the wings there, and Chelsea playing games every 3 or 4 days, I think until the new year, more or less. He obviously can't play every game. He's probably more at risk. What are your thoughts on that, Paul?
I think I've said this before, but I always seem to get that 7 to 8 million bracket wrong, or 7 to 8.5 million bracket wrong, and that I always pick the wrong person that ends up losing their place. Or someone that I feel's nailed ends up losing their place. But I think between him and Gabriel, that would be a more difficult question if it was him or Gabriel that I'd be moving Che Adams onto, because I'd definitely be moving him onto one of those if formation allowed. But he's not like Chelsea's kept 5 clean, I know Mendy's kept 5 clean sheets in a row, not to say Chelsea has, because I think he missed a game. But Zuma's played in all of those, I think. So him and Thiago Silva certainly look a more formidable defensive partnership than what Chelsea's had in the past. I wouldn't advise against it.
Fair enough. Thank you for that, Paul. Yeah, no, I think, I kind of overthink these, these kind of moves, and it cost me a couple of seasons ago, because remember when Alexander Arnold, he kind of, he was just broken into the team. I think it was two seasons ago, but there was always the thing, he's going to miss a game soon, he's going to be rested soon, he's going to be, rotated soon. And every week he just kept getting assists, clean sheet assists. And I was way too slow on him. And there was another player as well. I can't think it was.
It's in our nature, though, isn't it? It's in our nature as like hardcore fantasy football to take in all the information, to think what ifs, all the ifs, buts. But that's where the casuals, people call them that. I don't really know what to call them, but they're at an advantage, I think, because they wouldn't hesitate on the Zuma move, and they'll probably reap rewards for weeks on end until eventually he gets dropped. And it's like, I don't think you can worry too much about these things. Everything we're seeing right now from Chelsea and Zuma is that he's a great option. So yeah, there are some other players in the background that could pop in. And around Champions League, I don't doubt that he might miss the odd one. But over the course of the season, as things stand, Zuma will be one of the top scoring defenders, I think. It'll be close. I mean, he's not going to hit passing bonus all the time, obviously, which is what I'd love. But I'd imagine he'll be in that sort of top 10 players come the end of the season. Would have thought.
I think my only other issue, so they're obviously home to Sheffield United this week, then they're away to Newcastle the week after. You'd expect some decent points there. Their fixtures after that are not that good. I do think they have about a run of 7 or 8 games. So they have teams like, I think it's like Spurs, Arsenal, Man United, all these kind of things where he probably wouldn't get bonus. So you are relying on a clean sheet. But then we are putting in Zuma, I suppose. If we are putting him in as a long term pick rather than targeting fixtures. So you can say that about Gabriel and Diaz and Dallas and everyone else. I suppose, can't you? A couple of other questions then. We had a question earlier off Sam Betts on Twitter. Afternoon, lads. I was always going to move Ings back to Salah after tonight's game. Could there be better options than Mo during the next fixtures? Already own Kane and Son. Obviously going without Salah is obviously a massive risk because he can score a hat-trick in a blink of an eye as he did in game week 1. Luke, what are your thoughts on Salah moving forward? Do you think he's kind of essential, or are there other options?
The thing is, there are probably players that might do better than him or outscore him, but it's so much harder for me to tell you who there will be. Whereas Salah's just such an easy pick. I just don't. Yeah, you just get him in, and I have no doubt that he can do well. Or even if he does bad, you'll be in the company of most other people. And it's just that consistency, really. It's like, I say there will be 1 or 2 players that will probably outscore him, but it's much harder to pick who that will be. Whereas Salah will be in that sort of top 5 performing players over the course, almost no doubt. Doesn't matter if Liverpool are bad, fixtures are bad. He's proved it for a number of seasons now, hasn't he? So,
okay, superb. Thank you, Luke. So, Paul, you have some stats for us, and while you're reading out your stats, I'm not being ignorant, but I'm going to change Ings to Wilson on my phone. I think I think I've convinced myself. We were talking about this briefly before we started, and if you do want to get ahead, just staying with the pack and making the obvious moves all the time may not do it. So I think there is the potential for upside. If I was making a couple of transfers, I probably wouldn't, right? But Ings is dead anyway. I was only going to move him on to Kevin De Bruyne, who does have captaincy rivals on his, on those days, on the days we mention anyway. So it's not like, he's going to be absolutely, and he is playing Liverpool and Spurs as well. So, you wouldn't expect him, he may get something, but you wouldn't expect, like a 20-point haul. Famous last words here now, obviously. But I think I'm going to do it and take a risk.
This is going to be one of those ones where Wilson gets injured before the international break. You don't make the game on Friday night. You're going to be in bitching.
Or he doesn't even start this evening. Now he's not in the starting line.
Like, Dan, you're not getting to do a rant tonight. I've got the rant.
But just as easily as that could happen to Kevin De Bruyne, and he's only got 2 games where he's doing it, whereas Wilson's got 5, right? Well, not 5.
And you're not
kind of. Yeah.
And you're not captaining KDB anyway, right? Because you'll be captaining Kane on Sunday, Ferguson, sorry.
I'm not sure you're going to be happy tonight, though. Do you think Wilson's going to score tonight?
I think
you're bringing him in, so it's a tough question.
I think it's going to be interesting to see Southampton without Ings, because obviously they're going to be probably playing Adams and Long. They did concede 3 to Villa last week. Okay, Villa were probably kind of because they were 4-1 down, just going all out to chase the game. But I think the thing with Wilson, I actually had Wilson in my game week 1 FPL team. I did pick out Wilson at the start of the season again. He's a really classy player, I think, and we say this every week. You don't need to be a good player to have and score a penalty either. And with all the penalties that we are seeing, I just think it's worth the risk. If it was a one-off, I probably wouldn't do it, right? But that other Friday night, I don't have a captaincy for that one either. And I think missing 2 captains in 3 game weeks when I can potentially cover them both for 1 transfer, even if he scores 1 goal in either game, that's 18 or 20 points.
I think the appeal here is as well that if it does go well, you're one up on most of the top Sky managers as well, because a lot of them won't have done this move, if you know what I mean, because of the circumstances haven't been as such, or they might have coverage, or they might not think about that extra Friday game. So that's why I kind of like it a little bit as well. You've got a chance to go up on the casuals and the good players, I guess, if it goes well. Of course, you could have just spanked a transfer off the wall and it goes very badly, but there we go.
Is Bednarak back? Because I always seem to coincide Southampton conceding a lot with Jack Stevens playing. So, because he came off, Bednarak came off at half time in the last game, didn't he? And they conceded 3 in the centre half when it was Vestergaard and Stevens.
Yeah. That's true, and Southampton are quite famous now for this high line, aren't they? And Newcastle sit extremely deep. So I would have thought this game has got the makings of Southampton's defenders being on the halfway line a lot, which with Newcastle's pace, you think there might be a few opportunities there. The thing is, it's just so frustrating for me watching Newcastle. Sometimes it's 86 minutes and they don't get near the goal, and then Wilson comes out with 2 goals, doesn't he? So good luck with it anyway. I hope it works out for
Well, we'll see. I think I'm hoping more that Burnley score rather than Wilson scores, if that makes sense, because I think there's going to be a lot of White and Lamptey sort of owners. But anyway, we will see.
I want to do different stats to kind of the stuff that I do on a Sunday. Yeah. So what I've looked at is FF Stuff 3. If you don't follow on Twitter, it's a brilliant Twitter handle to follow for Sky Stats. And I've looked at not a fixed period of time, but what I've looked at is transfers in, or net transfers in, from the last time a player played. So any Sky managers that have brought in this player haven't reaped any benefits from bringing the player in yet, points wise. And I'll just give you the top 8 from there. So James Ward-Prowse has been brought in by net 10,000 managers from his haul last Sunday. Kurt Zuma, 9,200. Ziyech from Chelsea, 6,300. Chilwell, 5,800. Grealish, 4,600 managers. Vardy, 3,600. Again, that was after his demolition job at Leeds. Zaha, 3,100. And KDB, 3,000. So all of those managers have brought those players in without reaping their points benefit yet.
We just don't need to worry about those guys, do we?
No, that is a bit mad. Wow, I saw the transfer stats this week, and I think we had something in our Hub WhatsApp group as well, which showed the transfer stats at this time from either last year or the year before. I think it was Liam who did it, but it showed that it's not far off what it was a couple of years ago. I don't think. I think it is kind of slightly worse, but it's just mad. I just don't understand why people rifle through them, and I wonder if they honestly think that you get 5 transfers a week, and so you just have to use them. I don't know. The only tournament competition I've ever seen where it actively encourages people to go through their transfers is like a forum on FISO, for those who know FISO, where they'll have a race to 500 points. They all chuck in a tenner, and it's first to 500 points. Obviously, once they've done that, the team is dead. So you'd imagine that a couple of those didn't have, but other than that, it just seems There
was someone I've seen that was playing a Manager of the Month competition with their work, and the Manager of the Month competition paid something like double the amount out as what you would pay over the season. So as long as they won one Manager of the Month competition, they would be in profit for the season, and hence they can play it as a free roll after that. So I guess I could see why a small percentage of managers play like that as well.
That is what Chris D has just confirmed as well. Tim Barry says Bednarek is out. Apparently, I thought I heard yesterday he may have been back. Obviously,
that highlights Wilson's appeal even more, in my opinion. From owning Stevens in various fantasy formats over the years.
Well, I've done it now. He's in, and he's my captain for this evening. So we see how that will play out. Peter G.
I would do it if I didn't have Ben White. Genuinely, I would have done it if I didn't have Ben White, I think.
Peter says, Fergie, every transfer I do within an hour before the deadline never plays out well for me. No, I think they're probably wise words. And it's funny because on Twitter earlier, I kind of posted out a few options, and you can tell, the really, really seasoned managers, the one I know, who played fantasy football and Sky for years and years and years, were all kind of very, very reserved over it all. What's the point? What are you doing? Whereas those who maybe haven't played for that long are like, yeah, go on, do it. But I think with this one, I found a bit of a happy medium because, if it doesn't work out, it's only one transfer.
Remember a month ago, Fergie, when we were about to go online for the Sunday podcast and you were making Telegraph transfers and you had rushed to bring Jimenez in and he scored an own goal against West Ham.
That was like the worst. That was like the worst thing ever. How can you possibly bring in a striker? I think they were home to... Was it home to Fulham or home
they were away to West Ham. They were home
to Fulham the next week, weren't they? Away to West Ham, you bring in a striker, because he's on penalties. There was penalties being given every single game. You bring him in as a striker to score goals. First thing he does, scores an own goal. That was a proper, head on the desk sort of moment. As if, what the hell am I doing in my life? But anyway, Ronarid 9 with you on Wilson. Fingers crossed. There we go. We hope it works out. Martin Beasley asks Chilwell or Diaz. That is a nice question. Luke, Chilwell or Diaz?
Oh,
a tough one.
That's very tough. Yeah, I am a big fan of Chilwell. I have him in my team. However, I think Diaz is basically the top priority right now should be everyone's top priority. So I'm going to say Diaz because I think come the end of the season, as it stands, I keep mentioning the end of the season, but I think Diaz will be, if not first, top 3 scoring defender.
He'll probably be like Laporte from a couple of seasons.
That's what I'm hoping. Yeah,
from last year.
I think we all kind of felt that, but I fell into that trap before. I'll be honest, where I've picked Laporte when he's not been ready and he's got injured again, or I've gone for even Stones or something like that, just stupidly. So this time, I just really wanted to make sure I had enough information and I'd seen it, and everything I'm seeing right now makes it look like Diaz is going to be great. I mean, that price is ridiculous for what his potential is. I have no doubt in my mind that Diaz will be at least 10 million next season. I don't know why they've priced him so lowly, to be honest. I can only assume they didn't think he was a starter. I don't really understand.
He hasn't actually scored yet either, but I've seen he's come really, really close a couple of times as well. Mm-hmm. And their fixtures, I think it's from Sky game week 12. They go on an absolutely insane run. I think they're home to Burnley, home to Fulham, I want to say. Then they have an away game. Then they're home to West Brom, or something along those lines. They have the 3 home games in 4, and he should be nailed on. For at least 2 10s in that one. If not more. So with Chilwell, I do think potentially he's a really good option for tomorrow. If you are looking for a captain, I've got Bruno. Kind of neither here or there. But he's just as likely to get a blank as he is a kind of 15 or 18 pointer. But in the short term, I'd probably say Chilwell. Maybe in the longer term, I'd say depending on what you're looking at. But what do you think, Paul?
Yeah, I think Diaz is a set and forget throughout the season. I actually think that in those Man City games that he might be a good. It might bring back the whole let's captain, the solid 5-10 point defenders mentality, of which I think it was last season and the season before, if we captained Van Dijk every game, that we're captaining Salah, we would have been more beneficial at the end of the season. I think the same could potentially be said about Diaz as well for over like KDB or Aguero or Jesus, whoever was coming in for City.
Fair point. Question from Auto Reclose. He's got Bruno and James Rodriguez for Saturday captain. Obviously, assuming they both start, it is the first game, so we'll see the lineups. Luke, who would you pick if you had Bruno and Rodriguez?
Oh God, that's another tough one actually. That's really. I mean, to be honest, I would have probably said Rodriguez the way Everton have been playing up until the last couple of days. But I guess that's more of a wait and see. Do we get to see the lineup on that one? I'm pretty sure you do, right? Because Everton have obviously not looked particularly good with so many injuries. So I guess I'd have to say who else is back and playing. I think Digne's back, is that right? Coleman probably still out. But Richarlison's out, right?
He's back after the break, yeah.
They struggle without him. But then Man United haven't exactly been great either. To be honest, I'd probably go for Bruno because he's on penalties at least, right? And he can get one of those. I don't know about bonus, but playing in the centre of midfield rather than wide, which James Rodriguez does, I think you've got more chance of bonus. So I would just go for Bruno, to be honest with you.
Yeah, he's got kind of just slightly more avenues into points.
More avenues, yeah, exactly. I mean, James Rodriguez could easily just turn it on, light up that game, but I think that's harder to predict.
Cool. Question from Vukasin Popovic. Guys, players that you don't have but you expect to do well. Mina, Zaha and Chilwell. Oh, hang on. Sorry, this is an FPL question. Sorry, yeah. Vukasin, this is a Sky Fantasy. He's talking about -8s. Take the -8, Vukasin. That's our advice on that one. Thanks for your advice there, Luke. So there was a question around kind of transfer management, which for inexperienced players is really important question.
Toughest part of this game, isn't it?
It is. I think discipline, just like sitting on your hands, is the hardest thing to do, which I haven't managed to do this evening. But yeah, roughly, a transfer a week. You can't really go very wrong with that. Do you think it's going to be harder this year, actually, because obviously all the big teams, all the top 6, are basically playing a game every 3 days now, until the new year. All the games are also being shown on
TV,
on telly as well, so it also means we're likely going to see more Fridays. So it gives four captaincy days over 7. Over the 3, and if we get anything like we did last year, wasn't there football on 7 days a week at one point? It was absolutely mad. So those like obviously Liam, who won, he saved some back and he managed to nab himself a captaincy every single day. It's really, really important. So one a day I think is good. Apologies.
Team structures even more important this. It's always been important in Sky Game, but I think it's even more important this season that you don't want to be making 2 transfers to restructure your team if you've got your structure right. So what I mean by that, I guess, is having 1 or 2 6 million enablers, whether that's defenders like White, Lamptey, and players around that bracket, or your midfielders like Luke mentioned earlier on, Romeo. I know Conor Gallagher from West Brom, although he's probably an unfancied pick because they're not an attacking team, but he's picking up tackling bonus again at the 6 million spot. Having a structure of the team so that when you want to bring in a player for a Sunday for a 2-for-1, or when you pick up an injury, that you're only making 1 transfer and you're not making 2 swaps to make that move, is really, really important, I think.
Yeah, definitely agree there. Like the whole thing around managing your structure, to me, is probably the most important, but also hardest part of the game as well. Maintaining the price point so you can easily get to kind of one player or another. Not maybe getting stuck, especially this year, and maybe like a 5-3-2, for example, because it means that it's very hard to move back and forth between the positions, for example. It's really, really tough as well. But yeah, some really, really good advice there, Paul. Luke, if I can ask you, how do you expect the next month now? So after the international break, the following kind of month after that, how do you see it kind of playing out? Do you think that with Richarlison back, Everton will keep on scoring loads of goals? Are Spurs able to keep averaging 4 goals away or wherever it is? Are Man United going to turn a corner? What are your thoughts?
I better get down the bookies, because if I know all that, I'm going to be very rich. It's tough to say, but I think I'm basically a fixtures manager. I've always been that, and it's very tough to look at fixtures when this COVID scenario is on. Home and away arguably means less, etc., etc. So there's always going to be some outliers, but I can't remove that from my mind. So at the end of the day, if there are a good fixture run for a certain team, like Arsenal, look like they've got a decent run coming up. Leicester have got a decent run coming up. Palace's continues. Chelsea, another one we mentioned. So I'm just going to target the teams with the good fixtures, because I always think that they've got the highest potential. It doesn't always work out that way, but I don't see anything yet that's going to change my mind from that. The fact that Spurs go on a tough run pretty soon, I think there'll be a point which I think we'll all come to. Whereas, do we want to get rid of Kane? I think that might be the next big question.
Kane to Vardy,
Kane to Vardy,
based on what you're saying about Leicester.
Exactly that. So I've already got that sort of penciled in my mind as potentially happening, but that'll be tough to do, right? If Kane just continues to fire, and there'll be a divide here, and maybe some people will look to get both. somehow. So I think that's probably the next big decision on my mind anyway. And for now, I'll just continue to target the teams with good fixtures and hope it works.
Yeah, I think this is why. I was looking this afternoon. So my cheapest player, I have got Dallas, so I believe is 6.3. I want to say my next cheapest player is Højbjerg, and this is where, Paul, you've got like a slight advantage over me because you've also got White, haven't you, at 6.3? But having that one, or either one really cheap play, like a 4 point something or a 5 point something, or 2 6 point somethings, could maybe allow you, couldn't it, to have that 3 up front. Whereas if you've, like me, kind of spread my funds a little bit, having players like Gabriel, Højbjerg, Diaz, Grealish, it's going to be really, really hard for me to get to the kind of Kane, Salah, and Vardy at front. So I suppose my advice would be, if you are looking to get to those 3 up front, you probably need to have a look as to how you're going to do it. Maybe even a little bit earlier, like an earlier captaincy or something like that. But you are going to need a couple of GPs, I think.
I was speaking to someone earlier on, and they were asking advice on what to do with Ings, and asked them what their long-term aspirations, as in what would their wildcard team be, or where do they want to get to, and they needed money to get to what they want to do. And for me, it didn't feel like a stupid move to downgrade Ings to Lamptey or Ben White tonight or Vestergaard to get the extra captaincy on a game that they might be missing. And it sounds crazy having like 3 or 3.5 million in the bank, but that 3.5 million will then upgrade your Pulisic to your KDB or your third striker spot, or perhaps they picked Son instead of Kane and wanted to rectify that, or any of those types of scenarios. And certainly doing a downgrade at this point to restructure the team to where you want to be would definitely be could definitely be beneficial as well.
It's very, very easy to get kind of stuck in the present. We see it all the time, on articles and on Twitter and in our chat, and we've done it ourselves, right, as well, in terms of, you think, right, if I just make these 2 transfers, how many times have you heard this, right, guys? I'm just going to make these 2 transfers and then I won't touch my team for 8 weeks. It's like, really? But I do it myself, right? I always go, oh yeah, I'll do this, and then next week I'll do this. Things change, form changes, injuries change. It's so
quickly.
It is, exactly, especially this year.
You only have to do what Paul said last week, actually, which is if you sit down and create your perfect overhaul or wildcard team each week, I guarantee you it changes every week, just after 1 week of data. And it shouldn't, right? 1 week's of data shouldn't affect your decision making too much. I know you could argue that the fixtures have bumped along one day, so there might be some changes as a result of that, but you wouldn't have thought it would look too different each week. But to be honest, if I was to do it, it probably does. And it's very hard to know when you should make all those 2 or 3 or 4 swaps to get to that team, because by the time you get there, it might be outdated and you want a new one. There's no hard or fast rules on this. I just think having that flexibility that we've already talked about, and then just Vardy has got this good run coming up. I mean, I hate having Vardy in my team. He doesn't seem to score when I've got him, and he's absolutely ridiculous when I don't have him. But because of that run and the way Leicester are playing right now in their games, I feel like I'm going to have to do it somehow. So that's the kind of things that are in the back of my mind for these.
Yeah, they play away. They play away on Saturday the 29th of November, so it's a good hop-on spot. And similarly, they'll play away on Sunday the 6th of December as well. So there is definitely those sort of 3-for-1 opportunities if you're jumping off Kane onto Vardy and then.
The thing is, I will say, I think the opportunity for tactical swaps like that we'll have to ignore some of them, and they'll be few and far between. Just the rate of injuries, and like you said, there's so many games and captains to cover. I mean, Kane could force our decision for us. He hasn't got exactly the best record of staying fit for the whole season. I can't remember him playing a full 38 games in recent times. I don't think it's happened at all. So I don't doubt that at some point Kane will get injured. Hopefully it's for that perfect time where you can switch him and it won't be a concern because he's gone. But I guess you just have to pick and choose these tactical swaps. And if you do too many of them, you end up getting burnt, I think, by the end.
Absolutely agree. And Glenn Murray in the chat has been very, very bullish, saying Kane is for life, not just for Christmas. And to be honest, I think...
Was he saying that last season?
Well, maybe not. No, he probably... I don't think he was saying it in game week 1, probably, to be fair. But he is...
I get where he's coming from, because he's been ridiculously good. But at the end of the day, it's still only been 8 weeks of this season. the last 2 or 3 years, Kane hasn't been quite at this level, has it? So there's always that thing in the back of my mind. If Son gets injured, for example, not even Kane necessarily, I think that would really negatively affect the Spurs team. Yeah, so there's all these other things. Right now, I'm not selling Kane. No way. He's doing really well, but you never know in the future, I guess.
It's almost like at times, and this is not from like a football perspective or playing perspective, from a fantasy perspective. You almost need an injury to force your hand, don't you? Because if you've got like Salah,
then you can justify
exactly. If you've got like Salah, Kane, Bruno, and KDB, just for example, that eats up so much budget, and you almost need sometimes an injury to force your hand, because otherwise, coming off these players, like I'm planning now on going without De Bruyne for 2 games. I think in all fairness, it's not that bad. The 2 fixtures are hard, and also I've got captaincy cover, really good options on both days, so I don't think it's too bad. But I think I've certainly been burnt before. I'm sure loads of guys in the chat would have as well, where you come off these premiums even for a game or two and they just smash it, massively affect your rank.
Definitely, you can't have them all at the end of the day. You've got to pick and choose your opportunities, and they say this is 2 games and they're both tough. For me, Kevin De Bruyne is basically a season picker, but if you haven't got him, then you just have to pick the time to get on him, and it looks like a good time to avoid for 2 weeks.
Yep. Glenn and Martin are saying they're hoping that everyone sells Kane because they feel then he'd be a really good differential, which I think, in all fairness, Phil Speck has just got rid of Ings. Lamptey in, fingers crossed. I've now got 3 cheap defenders in Lamptey, Konza and Dallas. I think the people have been a bit unlucky on Konza, because he was a pretty good pick at Overhaul, wasn't he? Alongside Diaz. So Phil's got 6.2 million spare cash to play with now. Yeah, I do.
So that nice fixture. They've still got nice fixtures. He's not got much bonus potential, but Villa's got a nice run of fixtures, I think.
Yeah, Lamptey, I think, and White's not fairness, but especially Lamptey. I'm jealous of those who've got him, but only for this evening, because I think a game at home to Burnley. Burnley haven't scored in a few games. Lamptey is basically playing, as a winger, isn't he, right? And he's good for bonus, for tackles and stuff. I think he's.
It's crazy on Sunday when you had Højbjerg and I had Ben White, and I was thinking that you would easily outscore me. And at half time, Højbjerg sitting on, I can't remember, it was like 50 passes and 3 tackles. And then Ben White sitting on 2 tackles and 10 passes, and ends up hitting 6 tackles by the end of the game. Højbjerg hits nothing in the second half.
It is. It's unbelievable, and sometimes the best thing to actually do is just leave it alone. I've done it a couple of times in the last year or two, and I definitely did it. Was it last year or the year before with Son, where I brought in Son for for his red card, and if I'd have just left it, I'd have had an extra transfer and more points. But it was, obviously, it's a bit of a one-off, but I'm sure we've all done that as well, haven't we? Adam English says, RVN in for Cap tomorrow, Luke.
Yeah. Trust me, if he was in this game, there wouldn't be any discussion. We'd all have him straight in this game. So there'd be no point in doing any content. Yeah.
Assuming Adam is a fantasy champ man, obviously that is starting soon. If anyone's interested in playing Fantasy Champ Man Season 2, get in touch with Luke.
Starts on Thursday, right, Luke?
Yeah, that's right, on Thursday. Don't worry, I'll hook you up. Come to my Twitter. It's a great game to play. If you ever played Championship Manager back in the day, which I'm sure probably most of us did if we're in this kind of field, then yeah, it's a great game to get involved in. Easy to play as well.
Awesome. So at the start of the stream, we were on 989 subscribers. So I'm just going to flick on a prize that we're going to give away. If we can get to 1,000 subscribers, and also if Wilson scores this evening, I will give away this mug. So I've just put the mug on screen. So we've got a small prize, Fantasy Football Hub mug. Whoever said earlier on the chat, I'll have to go back and see. I think it was Ronarid9 said he'd brought in Wilson as well. Ronarid, if we can get to 1,000 subscribers by the end of the stream, and if Wilson scores tonight, I will give you a Fantasy Football Hub mug, and there will be plenty more of these coming. We're going to give away a mug on most streams for now, and we'll have to come up with some wacky and stupid ways of winning. But at the moment, if Wilson scores, Ronarid double celebration, captaincy points, and a Fantasy Football Hub mug. So good luck to you. Tim Barry, I'm off to watch the game. Good luck. Ashley Barnes will probably score and get man of the match. Hope Callum Wilson does the business tonight. Fergie. Okay, so the game is just about to kick off. Gents, Paul, have you got anything else you'd like to share or ask or anything before you head off?
Good luck to anyone that made any moves before deadline tonight.
Absolutely.
Apart from Fergie.
Thank you, mate. And I hope I'm hoping the Burnley score to wipe out all those Brighton clean sheets. Luke, thank you so much for joining us. Great, insight. Thanks for joining in the chat as well. Have you got anything to share with the guys?
Like you, I just hope Burnley score because I don't have Lamptey. I actually removed him last week for Che Adams to get the 2 Southampton games. Che Adams got 2 points. Lamptey went and scored, which is typical fantasy football. So I'm expecting a Lamptey haul tonight and Che Adams to do sweet FA. But there we go.
That's exactly the example of a move we just talked about, wasn't it? Where you kind of make the move. And,
yeah.
Do nothing with
exactly.
It. Indeed. So thank you so much to everyone as usual for supporting and interacting with us on this live stream. We may do some more if they are warranted. Dan Cox was very, very jealous he couldn't come on, but he was working. But I'm sure we'll have him on in the future. So if you like what you watch, please click the like button. If everyone could just click like, that would be very, very. We would be very, very grateful for that. Remember to subscribe in the bottom right hand under the corner. Let's try and get to 1,000 subscribers by the end of the stream. Our handles on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok are at FFH_HQ, and our podcast Twitter handle is at FFH_Sky. Please follow and feel free to ask us any questions at any time. Our website is fantasyfootballhub.co.uk, where you'll find everything you need for fantasy football all under one roof, including player comparison tools, the fixture ticker, Opta stats, top player team reveals, and much more. All of which is on our new free app, which you can find wherever you get your apps, searching for Fantasy Football Hub. Good luck to all our watchers and listeners this week. The very best of luck to you tonight and for the whole of Game Week 9. We'll be back on Sunday at 9 o'clock with Dan, Paul, and also current Sky champion Liam Dorrian will also be joining us on Sunday evening, looking at what we have learned so far this season and how to approach the next period of the season. We will see you then. Good night all. Come on, Burnley.